This, and note the lack of video there, on the same day, the Washington Post dropped yet another bombshell report. This one revealing that last summer, U.S. intelligence agencies had sourcing deep inside the Russian government, reporting that Russian President Vladimir Putin was directly involved in a cyber campaign targeting our election. The mission? Defeat or damage Hillary Clinton and help elect Trump. The Obama administration debated dozens of options for deterring or punishing Russia, but according to the Post, Obama feared that things could get far worse. They also worried that any action they took would be perceived as political interference in an already volatile campaign. And joining me now is former presidential candidate Evan McMullin, who's also a former CIA operative, Nayyirah Haq, former State Department spokesperson, and Naveed Jamali, former FBI double agent and author of How to Catch a Russian Spy. Thank you all for being here. Evan, I've got to come to you first and get your reaction to Donald Trump finally acknowledging last night via his favorite medium, Twitter, that in fact the Russians did meddle in the election. He blamed it on Obama. He said just out the Obama administration knew far in advance of November 8th about election meddling by Russia, did nothing about it. Why? What do you make of his finally acknowledging that? Blaming Obama, but acknowledging it.
Well, it's interesting. He cannot resist attacking President Obama, former President Obama, right? So there are two things that he just can't resist. Number one is to deny that he's being investigated, if he can still do that. The second thing is to attack President Obama. This is the thing. This is a distraction. He is speaking to his remaining 35 to 40% of the population, the U.S. voter population, that he needs to hold on to protect himself in the House. The House is important, obviously, because as the investigations move forward, if there's serious wrongdoing, then he may need the House to protect him from impeachment. So that's what I think this is all about, just throwing up a distraction to confuse the public.
Yeah, but does it concern you, though, that this tweet indicates that he was fully aware of what Russia was doing? I mean, that's what I read into it, that this is a consciousness of knowing it happened, and he's been denying it even happened up to now.
Well, yes, but I just think that's a given. He absolutely knows it was I mean, it was in the open. It was obvious. He knew it was happening. He encouraged it. I just think that's a given. He may say that he may try to confuse the matter, and he does, and he has for months. But of course he knows. So I'm just not surprised by that.
So let's talk a little bit. Nayyirah, I'm going to come to you first on this, because there is a politics. That Washington Post story was so bombshell that we tried to pick out just a few nuggets in it. One of them was the refusal, in fact, of Republicans to react to really what was hair on fire, DEFCON 1 information coming out of the highest levels of the White House and the national security apparatus that Russia was actively interfering in our elections, something that we've been talking about on this show since last July, and that clearly the Obama administration was also sending alarms about. Let's talk about Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, according to this blockbuster Washington Post story, Republicans resisted doing anything in response, arguing that to warn the public that the election was under attack would further Russia's aim of sapping confidence in the system. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell voicing skepticism that the underlying intelligence truly supported the White House claims. And then go to the state level on this. So at the highest levels of the Republican Party, they were saying, we don't even necessarily believe this and we don't want to do anything about it. Then you go to the state level. On August 5th, Jay Johnson tried to enlist the support of state officials. He did a conference call asking for them to secure their own systems. Brian Kemp, who's the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia, used that call to denounce Johnson's proposal as an assault on state rights, saying, I think it's a politically calculated move by the previous administration. Kemp said in a recent interview, adding that he remains unconvinced that Russia waged a campaign to disrupt the 2016 race. I don't necessarily believe that. So that's a greater level of denial than Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
Well, this is part of a pattern of the Republican Party and during the campaign really disregarding national security interests. So it's a divide between policy and politics. And unfortunately, given the election season, politics prevailed. You had CIA analysts who were deep in the Russian government, giving information through the CIA channels. Now, these are not people who are partisan in any way, raising it through their chain directly to the president, saying that this is a national security problem, and not only something that we see in the United States, but we've seen patterns of this elsewhere for Russia to undermine democracies throughout Europe. And given the timing of it, the people in charge of national security in Congress and for oversight really weren't able to look past the partisan politics.
Yeah, and neither, in a sense, was the White House. I should note that Mitch McConnell did send a letter on September 28th. McConnell and other senators issued a cautious statement that encouraged state election officials to ensure their networks were secure from attack, but it made no mention of Russia, so we should note that. But Naveed, you and I have talked a lot about what the administration's response was. This Washington Post story went into a lot of detail about what they were trying to do or thinking about doing, what they were concerned about doing. Some Obama administration officials looked back, according to the Washington Post, on the Russia period with remorse. They said, "It was the hardest thing about my entire time in government," said one former senior Obama administration official involved in White House deliberations on Russia. "I feel we sort of choked." What do you think?
Look, the biggest thing, Joy, when it comes to intelligence operations is attribution. I mean, you want to complete the mission, but the second part of it is the clandestine element. That is to say that if the mission is compromised, that the target cannot come back and say definitively, it is this country, it is you that actually launched this. And I think that in that regard, look, the Obama administration kind of choked on it. I mean, it's very clear that when the president spoke directly to Putin and said, hey, knock it off, that it seems that the Russians were very much going to physically target the physical infrastructure for the voting system. And when the president kind of called them on that, they backed it off. Now, that's about the attribution. When you go out and you call a foreign, adversary and you say you are behind this, you remove the cloak of attribution, of non-attribution. That is a hugely, hugely important part of this. And I think the Obama administration not coming out and being more forceful, and look, on a personal level, just not coming out before the election and really laying out the cards about what they knew. Look, at the end of the day, the president has the right to, as we've heard with Donald Trump, has the right to declassify anything. And I think that what we're learning today, there's no reason we shouldn't have learned that before the election. And I think that was, unfortunately, a miscalculation on the current administration. And one last thing, if you look across the pond, you look at France, you look at how France has weathered the same storm that the Russians launched against them, they're in a much less chaotic free fall than we are. And so there is a way to emerge from this. And I think, unfortunately, between the transition and the current president we have, the Russians have really, gotten one up on us.
But
and that's exactly the point that Naveed had mentioned about France and other countries having weathered this storm. This is part of a broader Russian campaign to undermine democracy. The U.S. is not the only target. You had Russian hackers who were systematically telling Syrians that Germany was the best destination for them to go, and that's part of why you had a massive influx of Syrian refugees in Germany that Germany could not handle.
Right.
You have cyber attackers looking at Ukraine and forcing blackouts by hacking their energy grid. The U.S. infrastructure energy grid is horrifically outdated. So we have serious vulnerabilities, not just to our electoral and democratic system. We have serious infrastructure vulnerabilities that now the Russians are going to be using to their advantage.
But, Evan, at the same time, just to go back for a second to the Obama administration's response, if you look at it at the time, you were running for president, so you could probably vouch for the fact that had the Obama administration, of all administrations, come out and said the Russians are attempting to interfere in the election and even hinted that it was to help Donald Trump, the reaction from Trump's base would have been that the Obama administration was trying to steal the election. Trump was already saying that the election was being stolen from him. And so my question is, from somebody who was on the ground, who's actually doing this, who's running for president, what would have been the reaction on the right had the Obama administration come out and said, hey, red flag, Russia's trying to interfere?
Well, it would have been politicized. Absolutely. And that is, and your other guests have made this point, but it's just so absolutely critical that as you read that Washington Post report, read it with an eye for partisanship. And you see at every step how our leaders didn't take actions that might have helped in retrospect. We might have wished they would have taken them, but they couldn't because of fear of partisanship or because of partisanship itself. I draw the viewer's attention to the letter that the Post talks about that Mitch McConnell ended up sending out and some other senators in late September, where he says to states, protect your voting systems, but we oppose any engagement from the federal government on these issues. So that's an incredible thing to do. He was more concerned, they were more concerned about protecting states from the federal government than they were about protecting our voting system from the Russians.
From the Russians,
that's where our partisanship has gotten, and that's something that we as Americans have got to look at, not just our leaders in Washington.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of amens on that. We are out of time. Evan McMullin, Nayyera Haq, and Naveed Jamali. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. And coming up, Jaron Speaks. Stay with us.
when news breaks.
The head of the FBI fired.
Our trusted NBC News journalists will guide you through it. So wherever the story goes,
The White House is